Welcome. You're listening to our exploration for today. This is episode 21.
Hello.
Today we're looking to something pretty fascinating. Ketamine Assisted Therapy, or KAT. It's showing real promise for depression.
It really is. But there's more to it than just the medicine, isn't there?
Exactly. We often hear about the drug, but what about the whole context? How someone's mindset and the actual environment they're in can, well, potentially transform the healing process.
That's precisely what we're focusing on today. We're calling this Talking Ketamine, and it's all about understanding these crucial factors, what experts call set and setting.
And crucially, we're getting this from the perspective of people who've actually been through KT.
Yeah, which is so valuable. If you're curious about what makes for the best possible experience, this is definitely for you.
And we should mention our insights are drawn from a really interesting new study. It's titled Understanding the Experience of Ketamine-Assisted Therapy and the Importance of Context. It's by Grace Stockwell, Nicholas Arho, Francesca Fogarty, Ceres Clayton, and Lisa Reynolds. Just published online, actually, July 2nd, 2025, in the Journal of Psychoactive Drugs.
And they did a great job getting into what participants really felt. It gives such a human perspective.
Definitely. So maybe let's start with the basics. What exactly is ketamine-assisted therapy?
Okay, so KAT is basically a newer treatment approach. It combines psychotherapy, talk therapy,
Right.
with the careful, controlled administration of ketamine.
And ketamine itself.
Yeah.
It's known primarily as an anesthetic, but it has other properties too, right?
It does. It's a fast-acting dissociative drug, and that dissociative part is interesting.
Meaning?
It means it can temporarily create a sense of detachment. You might feel detached from your usual thoughts, your reality, maybe even your body. And while that might sound strange, it can actually be really helpful therapeutically. It allows people to maybe look at difficult thoughts or emotions from a new angle, a bit removed.
Okay, I see. And importantly, it has antidepressant effects.
Yes, that's key here. Ketamine can produce rapid antidepressant effects, which is remarkable. But those effects, when ketamine is used alone, can sometimes be quite short-lived.
Okay. So temporary relief.
Potentially, yes. And there are also, concerns about its recreational use, and questions still remain about long-term safety when used just as an antidepressant outside of this therapeutic context.
So if ketamine by itself might only offer fleeting benefits, how does adding the psychotherapy change things? How does KT try to make the effects last?
Well, that's the core idea behind KT. By pairing the ketamine experience with psychotherapy, the goal isn't just a quick fix.
Right.
It's about trying to prolong those benefits, reduce the risks, and really help patients tap into their own inherent capacity for healing. It's about integrating the insights from the ketamine state into lasting change.
So it's about activating something within the patient themselves, using the ketamine experience as a catalyst, but shaped by their mind and the environment.
You've got it. And that leads us perfectly into this key concept the study explores: set and setting.
Okay, let's break that down. Set.
Set is essentially your internal world going into the experience. Your mindset, your mood, your expectations, intentions, even your personality.
Got it. And setting.
That's the external environment. So the physical room, obviously, but also who is there, like the therapist, and even things like music or lighting.
And what's really special about this study you mentioned is it looks at this from the patient's point of view.
Exactly. Which hasn't been explored quite as much, but it's so vital for understanding what the experience is actually like for the person going through it.
Makes sense. So let's dive into the set first, cultivating the right mindset. What did the participants say about that?
Well, a big theme was the importance of openness. Approaching KT with an open mind, and maybe even harder, trying to let go of specific expectations about what should happen.
I can imagine that's tough, especially if you've struggled with depression for a long time, tried lots of things. You'd naturally hope this is the one.
Absolutely. And the study actually mentions a participant who had really high expectations. When their symptoms didn't vanish immediately, they felt quite despondent. It shows the double-edged sword there.
So how do you manage that? If not expectations, then what?
Well, this is really interesting. The study suggests that while general openness is good, having clear therapeutic intentions was incredibly powerful.
Intentions, like goals for the session.
Sort of, yeah. But maybe deeper than just goals. One participant described it beautifully, saying it was like shining a light on a psychic potential. Another said it was like holding a lantern on a map, guiding the experience.
Wow. That's a powerful metaphor. Is there an example?
Yes, there was one participant who really prepared. They spent hours in a deep prayer state beforehand. Their intention was specific: explore the spiritual realm to gain a better understanding of oneness. And they reported having a deep mystical and spiritual journey that felt directly connected to that intention. It really suggests our internal focus can profoundly shape the experience.
That's fascinating. What else helped with the set?
Mindfulness came up too. Practicing mindfulness both before and during the sessions seemed to help people stay present and grounded, less caught up in what one person called a critical mind.
Quieting the inner critic.
Exactly, being more able to just be with the experience. And another thing was understanding how K2 works.
Like the science behind it?
Yeah, when therapists explained the potential mechanisms, maybe how ketamine affects brain pathways involved in mood and thinking, it helped participants make sense of things. They understood the new coping systems they might be developing, knowing the why.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay, so that's the internal set. What about the setting? The external environment?
Hugely important, according to the participants. One really interesting finding was about the therapist.
Right.
Knowing that their therapist had personally experienced KT themselves made a massive difference for some participants.
Really? Why?
It built trust. They felt more understood, like the therapist really got it, and made them feel safer and more willing to open up.
That completely tracks, if your guide has walked that path.
Precisely. And that feeds right into the therapeutic alliance, that trusting relationship with the therapist. Participants said feeling looked after was absolutely key to feeling safe enough to let go and have a deep experience.
Feeling safe seems paramount.
It does. And that safety extended to the physical space, too. Just having a comfortable setting helped people relax, shift focus inward, and not worry about their surroundings.
So beyond just basic comfort, did specific elements of the setting act as, like, guides?
Yes, definitely. The study mentions how the feel of the room mattered when it felt less like a sterile clinic and more like a spiritually welcoming space or a sacred space.
Setting a different tone.
Exactly. It helped facilitate the journey. And then there was music.
Oh, I bet music was huge.
It really was. Participants consistently describe music as a powerful guide, actually shaping their experience.
How so?
Well, things like the tempo and volume mirroring the intensity of the ketamine effects, music literally carrying them to different mental spaces. One person shared how hearing religious-sounding music led to this intense vision of being cleansed with light. They described it as feeling profound.
Incredible. So these experiences, shaped by set and setting, often led to this idea of letting go.
Yes, letting go of psychological burdens. And what's really remarkable is how active that process could be. For some, it meant revisiting past trauma, but in a new way.
Revisiting trauma, how did that work?
There's a striking example. A participant described re-experiencing that whole event, a past trauma, but then during the session, they started pirouetting and dancing.
Dancing.
Yeah. They felt they were transforming the memory, almost like rewiring the situation, turning it into a healing experience. It sounds like this embodied re-scripting of the past.
That's quite profound. What our minds can do.
Isn't it? Another person talked about moving from dark, sort of sepia tone visuals and crying, feeling it wasn't even their own tears, but something ancestral, to then seeing hopeful colors. They felt they could finally let go of old ruminations, just let things flow through.
Like a weight lifted.
Exactly. And it wasn't just about the past. It also helped people let go of worries about the future.
How did that manifest?
Sometimes through vivid visions. Concerns about the future might transform into something comforting or even a mystical encounter, shifting their whole perspective on the worry.
Which would naturally help you focus more on the present, feel more resilient.
Right. So this letting go has huge potential. But the study is also careful to point out the vulnerability that comes with it.
Okay, that's important. It's not all easy.
Definitely not. Participants talked about feeling incredibly raw and open afterwards. One used the metaphor of being naked when everybody else has got clothes on.
Wow, that's vivid. That level of openness needs careful handling.
Absolutely. And sometimes the structures around the therapy didn't quite match that need. One person felt jarred being asked to fill out questionnaires right after a deep spiritual experience.
Yeah, I can see that. Like being pulled back too abruptly.
Right. It highlights the need for real gentleness and maybe different kinds of follow-up, and also the difficulty of returning to everyday life.
How so?
Some found it hard coming back to their daily burdens from what they called the ketamine world, which had felt safe and purposeful. It could make their real-life suffering feel even starker in contrast, at least initially.
So the integration part after the session is critical.
Absolutely critical, because KT can also bring buried trauma to the surface. It can reactivate difficult emotions.
Which means you need ongoing support. It's not just the session itself.
Precisely. This isn't a quick fix. It's the start of a process that needs continued therapeutic support.
Okay.
And this leads to a really crucial caution in the study.
Yes.
One participant, who had a history of suicidal thoughts, actually experienced a temporary increase in those thoughts after a particularly profound mystical experience during KT.
Oh, wow. That's serious.
It is. Now, the study stresses these thoughts were temporary for this person and they settled, but it powerfully underscores the potential impact.
So careful screening beforehand is essential.
Essential. Rigorous screening, robust safety protocols, and really solid post-session integration and ongoing care. These aren't optional extras, they're fundamental.
It really drives home that old saying, doesn't it? Anything powerful enough to heal is also powerful enough to harm if not handled correctly.
Exactly. Responsible, supported care is just paramount with something this potent. The context, the support, it's everything.
So wrapping this up, what are the big takeaways about ketamine-assisted therapy from this study?
Well, it's crystal clear it's not just about the ketamine.
Right.
The whole experience, how you prepare your mind, the set, the environment you're in, the relationship with your therapist, the setting, the support you have, these are central. They shape the outcome. They help activate your own healing capacity.
Cultivating that openness, having clear intentions, using mindfulness, creating a safe, even sacred feeling space, the therapeutic trust.
Only matters.
Tremendously. And understanding that letting go can be deeply healing, allowing for rescripting trauma, releasing worries, but it also creates vulnerability, which demands that careful, ongoing support and really solid clinical practice.
Couldn't say it better. It's powerful medicine, and it needs to be treated with respect and care at every single stage.
So a final thought for you listening. As you think about this, maybe consider how understanding the set and setting for KT might shift how you view any kind of therapy or healing process.
Good question.
What if the context we intentionally create for healing is just as transformative in its own way as this specific treatment itself? Something to ponder.
Definitely something to ponder. And a big thank you to Grace Stockwell and her colleagues for this really insightful work.
Yes, indeed. We've really only skimmed the surface today, but hopefully it's given you a richer understanding of KT. Thanks so much for joining us for this exploration.
Thank you.
Until next time, keep being curious, keep learning, and keep asking those questions.